Alright, now let's do a confidence interval for a single proportion. Now this is where saving a graph is really nice. I can go in here and I made the single proportion confidence interval. No, single proportion test. See, I've already done this, but we'll look at doing it again here. So I go here, that's what I just made in the previous video. I open that graph. It opens up, and what I want to do immediately then is save it as something else. So I'll click here, and it says title, duplicate this graph, and so I could do something like, see, I've already got one confidence interval, but so I'll just do a CI for confidence interval and say save. And if I do that right away, then I can come in here and say, instead of a hypothesis test, this is a confidence interval for a single proportion. So I just made a confidence interval for a single proportion. Now, confidence interval, I don't have a hypothesis, so I'll just get rid of those. I still need data, and notice that really made things look screwy over here for a moment. But I still need all these things, successes, failures, and I need to change them if necessary. Here's p hat. I don't need a p-value anymore. Now, I still need a standard error and alpha lines. Okay, so I can do that. Okay, so I still need that standard error and alpha lines. But now, to calculate that standard error, I don't have P0, I just have P hat, and so I just need to come in here and make that subscript say hat, or whatever you called it. I mean, hat's not too bad a thing to have in there. But there, I made my standard error. And now here, normal distribution, see, it doesn't know what to do because it also says P0. Well, I don't think that's in a subscript, so oops, I don't know what I just did. There we go. Hat. And there's my beautiful line. I don't know if this is still on projector mode or what, probably, yeah, okay. So there's my line. And then confidence interval is just made from that minus 1.96 times standard error on each side, but of p hat. And so I'll make that say hat. I'll make that say hat. And there are the bounds on my confidence interval. And there's a nice picture of it. Now, all this other stuff, I don't need all that, and so I'll just get rid of all that stuff. Or here, click on the X's. Don't need the probability. Don't need that. So that's all I need for my confidence interval. Now, the one thing you might want to add to this is, after you come up with that standard error, is you might want to do the margin of error. So I'll do an M and underscore E equals. So margin of error, and that is the 1.96 times the standard error. So subscript E, come up out of that. And And there's this thing called margin of error, and it is just that plus and minus part that we add and subtract to the p hat for our confidence interval. But there we have it. There's my confidence interval. And again, remember that we did have on the original test of hypothesis, right? We had the 0.4, and notice that 0.4 here is well within my confidence interval, my 95% confidence interval, and therefore I am, quite certain that I would not reject my null hypothesis, right? Because the confidence interval and the hypothesis test should give you the same conclusion almost all the time. Now with proportions, you got to be a little careful there, because the standard error is calculated slightly differently depending on whether I'm doing a confidence interval or a hypothesis test, right? Because with the confidence interval, well, all I have is p hat, and so I use the p hat to create my standard error. Whereas with the hypothesis test, well, my hypothesis says p0, so I create my standard error with that hypothesis, and we'll see that again for two proportions. But there we go. You can add that margin of error calculation if you want, and so what we have is the p hat, which we found here, 0.32 plus or minus this margin of error, and so we do that down here to get our limits. Okay, much quicker. See, once we've done this thing once, which took us forever, this went much faster to produce that confidence interval. Okay, and then once you've got it all in, make sure you save it again, and then I guess we're done with that.